Welcome, students. Today we'll be talking about the landmarks and culture of the Western region. Now, it's a huge region, and we're just going to talk about just a couple highlights, just things that I find very interesting and that I think you'll find interesting too. So to begin with, we're going to talk about the natural features that have been popular with many travelers. One of them is the national parks that are located in this region. The United States Congress established Yellowstone National Park in 1872, and it was the world's first national park. Yellowstone covers 3,400 square miles. It's bigger than the states of Delaware and Rhode Island combined. Just the park. There's an active volcano in the park. There are about 2,000 earthquakes there every year, and the park has more than 300 geysers. A geyser is a type of hot spring that shoots boiling hot water and steam into the air. Old Faithful is the name of one of the most well-known geysers. The name of Old Faithful was chosen because the geyser is predictable. It erupts every 91 minutes. Each eruption lasts 1.5 to 5 minutes. Today, up to 4 million people come to visit Yellowstone National Park each year. Rising 1,267 feet above the surrounding ground, Bear Tower was America's first national monument in 1906. The site is considered sacred to the Lakota people and other tribes in the area. Bear Tower is actually the core of a volcano exposed by erosion. The magma cooled and it crystallized in the hexagonal columns separated by vertical cracks. The parallel cracks once made it a popular place for rock climbers from all around the world, but this practice of rock climbing on Bear Tower has stopped out of respect to its honored place as a sacred Lakota landmark. Now, we're going to travel all the way over to the west coast to San Francisco, where the Golden Gate Bridge was completed in 1937. When it was completed, it was the longest suspension bridge in the world. The bridge is almost 9,000 feet long, has two beautiful towers that are 820 feet tall. While most bridges are painted steel gray to protect them from corrosion, the Golden Gate Bridge is painted international orange to help it blend in with the red-orange tones of the rocks and the hills around San Francisco Bay. All right, well, now we're going to travel far to the north and far to the west, to Alaska and Hawaii, where millions of people from all over the world travel each year. People travel to Alaska to see its beautiful glaciers. Cruise ships will sail through the waterways of Alaska to allow people to see the glaciers up close. Now, in Hawaii, people will visit for the tropical weather and the landscape. The warm weather year-round makes its beaches the place to visit. People also come to visit the volcanoes of Hawaii, and we'll talk a bit more about Hawaii in a moment. If we head back to the mainland of the United States in the west, another amazing landmark are the Pueblo dwellings of the Anasazi people. The Anasazi are the ancient ancestors of the Pueblo Indian tribes that live in Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, and Arizona. The ancient Pueblo people built large buildings made of many individual rooms. Families built the buildings over generations. Different families lived together in a single building, like an apartment complex today. The Spanish called the buildings pueblos. Pueblo is a Spanish word that means village. It's from these pueblos that the ancient Pueblo people got their name. All right, let's talk a bit about the foods of the western region. If we travel back to the coastal waters of the Pacific Ocean, we'll see how the water provides abundant seafood that's shaped the cuisine of the West. Salmon is often baked on a board of cedar wood. Oysters are served barbecued, baked, fried, or raw on the shell. One popular dish is called chiapino, a stew made from a mixture of different kinds of fish and shellfish that come from the Pacific Ocean. In the 18 and 1900s, many people immigrated to the United States from Asia, from China and Japan and Korea. And these Chinese and Japanese and Korean immigrants on the West Coast had a huge influence on the popular foods of the region. In the 1800s, many Chinese Americans worked on the quickly expanding railroads and brought many Asian foods all across the western part of the United States. A favorite local food in Hawaii is called saimin. saimen, a kind of ramen noodle soup. Eaten at any time of day, you can find this soup at a snack bar, coffee shops, or even at McDonald's in Hawaii. Now at luau's, people often eat kalua pig, a whole pig, sometimes with an apple in its mouth. It's covered with banana leaves and cooked in a pit in the sand. If we travel back up to Alaska, they have a really cool version of ice cream that was traditionally made from reindeer fat by the Inuit people. A combination of reindeer fat and seal oil and freshly fallen snow, sometimes with fresh berries. If it's whipped really fast, air can be whipped into it by hand, and it slowly cools into a foam. It's called akutak, after the first catch of a polar bear or seal. And it's often eaten at funerals or any other celebration. Today, akutak is usually made from vegetable shortening instead of reindeer fat. Let's talk a little bit about how some of the fun things you can do on the West Coast. Now, the Pacific Coast and Hawaii are known for surfing. Every morning before sunrise, dedicated surfers head for the beach. In the 1970s, a group of surfers in California combined their surfing skills with skateboards to create skateboarding that we know today and skate culture, which has greatly influenced culture all across the country. Now, we've talked about how the West is known for its mountains, and in the warm weather, people enjoy hiking and mountain trails through the rainforests, mountain climbing, rock climbing, and kayaking. Many people travel to the West Coast in the spring to watch for gray whales that are migrating in the Pacific Ocean. In the winter, snow sports are king. Snowboarding was invented in Baker, Washington, which has the highest annual snowfall of any ski area in the world. I wonder if any of you have ever tried snowboarding or skiing. People also enjoy snowshoeing. This is really cool. Now in Alaska, dog sled racing is a favorite sport. The Iditarod, the most famous race, begins in Anchorage and ends 1,150 miles later in Nome, Alaska. A few teams of dogs and their mushers, that's what the drivers are called, have covered that distance in just an amazingly short 9 days. No wonder it's an event that's called the last great race on Earth, the Iditarod. And the native people of Hawaii have developed have practiced a dance known as the Hula. It's often performed at parties called luau's. The Hula is traditionally accompanied by a chant called a mele. Instruments such as the ukulele and the ipu, which is a drum made from a gourd, also accompany the dance. Both men and women wear leis, which are like flower necklaces, around their heads and ankles and wrists and necks. Originally, the hula was performed to honor ancient Hawaiian gods or a powerful chief, and it's still a really important part of Hawaiian culture today. So that's just a little bit about just some kind of special and unique aspects of culture from the Western region. So today we're just going to reflect on some of the things that maybe we already knew about, maybe some things that we learned, and some questions that we still have about the culture of the Western region.